Hello and welcome to another episode of WhipChat. This is a special edition of WhipChat. Today I have a couple of special guests. First, I am co-hosted today by my son, Sebastian.
Hi, guys.
Hi. And the other thing that's super special is we are interviewing Johnny Ohgren. Welcome to the show, Johnny.
Thank you very much. Good to see you guys.
And you have some big news to let the Whip community know. You want to go ahead and let people in on this big secret that's not so secret?
Well, I don't know if it's a big secret, but I got the second edition of my book coming out.
Second edition. See? Right there. Second.
Yeah. That's the first edition, and here's the second edition.
The second edition. Look at that. Oh, it's beautiful.
Very.
Oh, thank you very much.
Of course, in the first one, you covered a lot of great material and has been a wonderful reference for making all kinds of beautiful things and really spells out a lot of the details there. I've used it in a number of different builds just to reference, like, how did I do this again? So thank you very much for spelling that out, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you have in the new one. I do want to let people that aren't familiar with you know just a little bit about you before we get into some of the details in the new book. So you are the primary craftsman, owner, CEO, and janitor over at Witchcraft Whips. Is that correct?
I'm everything. I'm absolutely everything.
Awesome. And you make absolutely stunning whips that are intricately braided, beautiful, high plat count, as well as a award-winning whip maker yourself. And you were the judge at this year's Whipcon also. So thank you for all your service there, and we will look at some of your whips and some of the whips from Whipcon here in a minute. So tell us a little bit about your new book. What's some of the cool things that you've added?
Well, the first book primarily focused on the Aussie bull whips, as I call them, or the target bull whip.
Okay.
It sort of touched briefly on what I refer to as the classic model, and then it went on to snake whips. Mm-hmm. And I just really wanted to expand on the book to make it more comprehensive. So the new book or the second edition book will focus again on the Aussie bull whips and go into greater detail on the classic model. And it also covers snake whips, signal whips, and stock whips. So we got complete instructions for 5 whip models.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Is it going to retain everything that was in the first book as well?
Yeah, well, essentially, I took all the information from the first book and just made a bit of tweaking here and there, updating a couple of things just to touch it up a bit. And plus the additions of the classic model bull whips, mm-hmm. the signal whip and the stock whips, plus a couple of extra things.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing those new things. You did such a great job in the first one here. I don't know if you've had a chance to look through it. You should flip through his first edition. And any questions you have,
you can hand that one down when you get the new one.
Absolutely. That one has some nice autographs in the front, though, so we'll have to see. At some new ones. Oh yeah, see, yeah. Bring it over this way. Yeah, see.
Really awesome.
It is. So, do you find that those models, like the signal whips and all, those are the primary ones that you get requested to build specifically? I noticed no indie whip you mentioned specific, or is that your classic model?
Well, the indie and the classic are quite similar, mm-hmm. So I didn't go into details on how to make an indie style bull whip, but I'll cover that somewhat in the section of the book that's on the classic model. So, but they're quite similar. So if you build a classic model bull whip with an 8-inch nail spike, you'll essentially end up with an indie bull whip.
Okay, that's wonderful. And as people get specialized in indie, of course, you have your people that are really particular about how many, squares are in the handle showing and all, and that's easy enough to tweak.
If you want to get into all those kind of nifty details, you can, of course, but that's not in my book.
Right. Yeah, go to your indie cosplay forums and stuff, and you can find that detail pretty clearly. Actually, I think there's several videos on YouTube by other whip makers that talk about some of those things as well. So, but as far as building it, and so that you can pick those details in your own book. Do you feel like you're showing people a detailed recipe that you have to follow or you can't make a whip? Or are you kind of showing people the idea behind it also?
Well, I essentially try to cover the techniques and methods and reasoning that I use, but it's worth mentioning that it's the techniques and methods that I use today, because things have been different in the past and will probably continue to evolve down the line. So this is sort of a snapshot on how I do things currently.
Sure.
But yeah, I really wanted to. I do provide for like the Aussie model and the stock whip and the classic bull whip complete instructions for a particular whip, but I also try to explain how to sort of adjust it if you want it a wee bit heavier in the second part of the thong,
Right.
if you want it to use this same design but for a longer or shorter whip, how you sort of adjust the measurements and what have you. So I wanted to provide quite clear details on a build and then describe how to adapt that to other builds.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I think that's going to be very useful for people as they try to, once they can build it according to the recipe, just like you make anything in the kitchen, once you can follow the recipe, then you know if you need to add a little more salt or add, change your recipe up. You need to first know how it's supposed to taste correctly, and then start changing it a little bit.
Yeah, and also I think the first build of the book is for the Aussie model because it's a very popular and useful model, and that goes into great detail on how to measure, how to adjust or calculate or what have you. And then for the remaining builds, I'll sort of dial down the amount of information I'm giving you. So in a sense, I'll force you to calculate your own strand widths once I have explained how to do it so that you actually get the practice. Because I think that many makers who learn from like YouTube or similar will learn how to build a 6-foot bullwhip, but they can't convert that to a 7-foot bullwhip because they don't have the strand lengths, for example. So I think it's important to sort of get that mentality and learn how to adjust things and how to calculate things on your own. So I'm really hoping that my book helps somewhat with that as well.
I hope so too. I know that it's been frustrating. I've talked to other makers as well that say the similar thing. Like they're just begging people to, like, where do I need to drop this? You didn't say where I had to drop the thing in at this belly or this overlay. Like, well, you need to understand. I mean, yes, we can measure that out and show you on this one. I helped someone make her first bullwhip. She read, I can't remember, it was one of the classic American books, but it was she wanted the big black snake whip, but it basically meant a black bullwhip in the book that she was reading. And so I showed her all the drops and wrote everything out, and then she sent it to me later, and it was really gappy, and she should have dropped at different places, dropped later, not drop as soon. And it turns out that I pull a lot harder than she does. So because of that, the strands didn't go nearly as far, and I guess I didn't do a very good job teaching her that sort of thing.
I remember, when I was just starting out a bunch of years ago, I would ask a more experienced maker a question like, how long do you cut this or that or what have you? And I would be quite frustrated with answers like, well, you just have to cut it wide enough or braid it long enough.
Yeah.
And I was like, how hard can it be to just tell me 34 inches if that's the correct answer? So it was really frustrating not being able to like get a certain answer. But later on, I realized, it really differentiates from different whips. It's always a case-by-case decision. So sometimes, you just have to cut it long enough or wide enough, whatever that may be. So it's the best possible answer I could have been given.
Yeah, it really is, and it's difficult for beginners to learn. Sebastian hasn't made his first one yet, but I'm afraid he has his own. He has it there. That's his whip that he can crack.
Yeah.
And do you know the name of the?
You enjoy it?
Oh yeah.
Hey, isn't this just like a normal stock whip?
It's a bull whip.
Bull whip. Oh, okay.
Yeah, normal bull whip.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy it?
Yes, I do. I enjoy it a lot.
What do you know the name of the
Awesome.
crack you can do?
I think I just know how to do the forward crack,
Yeah,
if that's what you call it.
Right?
yeah.
The
Exactly.
cattleman's crack,
Cattleman's
perhaps?
crack. Exactly. Good job. That's exactly
You can
right.
also use it to chase your dad around the house.
He can do
I
that.
can do that.
Oh, dear.
Awesome.
We have a rule against that, though.
Oh man.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
So, sure.
So what was it like judging the Whipcon this year?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic question. Well, it was good fun. Really. It's always challenging. We decided on to use a like a proper scoring system for the whips to set them apart, because I also helped judge the last whip making competition as well. And you can sort of say you have 20 entries. You can fairly quick pick out like, okay, these 6 whips will be in the top somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have to sort of sort them out. Okay, which one is the second whip? Which one is the third whip? And if you're just going off a feeling like, okay, I'm a bit more drawn to this particular whip, and maybe the other judge is a bit drawn to the other whip. So I wanted a way to sort of really set the whips apart. So what we did was that we sort of found our top contenders in each category, and then we gave them a score from 0 to 50 for their design and the craftsmanship.
Okay.
And they also got a score from 0 to 50 in the handling and how well they cracked. And that way it was really easy. So I put down my scores. Say a whip got a 42 points for the craftsmanship and maybe 38 for the handling. And that gave it a total score. And that sort of made it mechanical in a sense, like one whip would come out slightly on top of the other.
I see.
And having 2 whips on the exactly same point would be very unlikely. So I think that system worked well. And I also think that whips should be judged both on the craftsmanship and how well they perform. So I think it's a good system.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I think so too. I'm trying to find in my photo album. I didn't get a great picture of all the finalists for the leather whip. I know that you have at least one of them, right? From the competition.
I have 2.
Oh, you have 2 of them. Which 2 do you have?
The second and third place.
Which ones do you? Oh, that's right. So Blake Gorey got first place, right? And
Correct.
Let's see who.
Second was Alex Jacob.
Alex Jacob. That's right. And then Adam Winrich was the third place, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
Do you have those handy?
Yes, I do. Do you want me to fetch them?
Oh, I'd love to see them. Yeah. Could you show us a little bit?
Just a sec.
Sure.
I have them hanging on the wall, so I just need to pull them down. There we are.
All right, so we'll switch to...
Which one do you want to see first?
Well, let's look at the second place there.
Second place.
Alex Jacob of Cobra Whips, right? Oh, look
Correct.
at that.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about when you were scoring it, what you're looking at here as an expert. Look at that.
Like skills.
Well, first and foremost, we look at like the craftsmanship. And the craftsmanship, I mean, this whip wasn't made to be a competition entry whip. It's only a 16 plat, if you will. Usually for the whip making competition, it's usually a more high plat whip. But it's very well made, and it shows a lot of creativity here with the integrated pommel into the braiding.
So if
the strands...
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, the strands are cut wider to cover the diameter of the pommel. And then they taper really rapidly and go into the handle and the rest of the thong. But this whip scored really well when it came to the handling because the handling is on point.
Awesome. Do you know
Yeah.
anything about the construction methods he used, or that you can determine from looking at it?
Well, let's see. I don't remember if it's a single or double belly design, but Alex normally doesn't use any bolsters, so it's essentially a fairly thick core and two bellies on top of that. I'm pretty sure this one has two bellies, and then the overlay.
Wow, that is just stunning.
And yeah, and Alex is also the original inventor of the Dyneema folds.
Oh yeah, braided into the end of it there. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's no separate fold. It's all one continuous piece. So you can actually tell right away that the natural curve of the thong also goes into the fall
Oh wow.
That's really cool.
instead of being a flimsy strip of leather.
Right, which probably
it's a
helps
really
with the
nice
cracking.
whip.
Yeah. Yeah, that is beautiful. Very lucky to have it.
Yes. Yeah, I traded one of my whips for this one with Alex, and then
Whoa.
we ended up entering into the competition, and I earned him second place.
Wow. Congratulations, Alex.
That's amazing.
Sure.
Yeah.
It really is. And the third place was Adam's 8-foot 24 plat bullwhip.
Oh,
Whoa.
look at the plaiting on that. Yeah.
It's really pretty. That's actually really awesome. Wow.
So I don't know how many 8-foot 24 plat Adam Winrich bullwhips there are, but there can't be too many out there.
No.
So I'm quite happy to have one of them. And this one is shot loaded. It has 3 bellies, I believe.
Yeah, he said
yeah,
3.
I'm quite sure.
Whoa.
And the overlay, which is quite a lot, and it's a fairly heavy whip. But Adam told me he just made it shot loaded and with 3 bellies because it sounded cool. And I have to agree, it does.
It does sound cool. What is the end on? What's the hitch? How many point end?
It's an 8-point
8-point full hitch.
full hitch.
Oh, that's tiny.
Quite a small one.
Wow.
Yeah, those strands.
I think
get really
Adam
thin,
took a lot of notes from Chris Barr making this whip, and it really shows. So the overlay strands are split to 0.5 mil thick, so they're really thin, and that also makes for a really teeny tiny point.
Wow. Yeah, 0.5 mil. My goodness.
Wow.
That is very, very small. And then
Yeah.
I do think it's fascinating to see your level of expertise as you're eyeing those things. Clearly, they picked a great judge for that. I mean, you do have a couple of books on the subject, so.
I do.
What about when you went to the nylon? Was it very different as a leather whip maker judging the nylon whips? I've got.
Well, obviously, I'm not as knowledgeable about like how to make nylon whips, since I'm all in the leather category myself. That being said, I'd like to think that I can recognize quality when I see it.
Sure.
And just handling the whip and seeing how it performs. So, but it's great fun. Lately, the last maybe 3 or 4 years, the artistry that goes into nylon whips has really increased. So it's good fun. I also love the fact that we're seeing more full plat nylon stock whips.
Full plat. Does it mean the handle completely covered, or what?
Yes.
Okay.
Usually, with the nylon stock whips, it's only half plat handles, but I really love the full plat.
Right.
ones.
Oh, I see.
So I'm happy to see more of that.
Awesome. Yeah, these are gorgeous. And actually, this knot looks familiar down here.
Yeah. You can learn that particular knot in my book.
That's right.
That's cool.
I have yet to tie that one. I should actually, that'll be on my to-do list here in the next little bit. I need to do that.
I do have a section in the book where I talk about designing your own custom knots with a fairly simple technique that I came up with. And I included that knot in the book as one of the examples. And Chris Wright put that on his competition whip, and it's good fun seeing it in person.
Yeah, it is. I like that. And it's just fascinating to see. I mean, we have 3 extremely different whips here, but with different designs in them. But yeah, that must have been difficult to judge.
Especially the one over to the right. It looks like a bunch of snakes.
It's an octopus.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so tell me, as a judge, how did this feel to hold, and how did it crack and all that? I've had several people ask me.
Yeah, well, right away, it's a absolutely fantastic whip. I mean, the creativity there is absolutely amazing. I've never seen any nylon work even come close to that. The octopus is absolutely beautiful. So, I mean, you can't score much higher for craftsmanship. I think what sort of, again, I just want to really point out it's an amazing whip. It's absolutely amazing. But what sort of brought it down from the first to the second place position was that it was a wee bit awkward to hold. Like it wasn't very comfortable because you have the eyes from the octopus, and you also have like the tentacles and what have you. So the grip is a wee bit awkward, but as a showpiece, it's absolutely magnificent.
Yeah, it really is beautiful, and it cracked nicely once you were able to hang on to it.
Sure, but I think from a handling standpoint, Adam's whip was a bit better, so that's sort of what put him slightly on top. But yeah, it was a really difficult decision. I mean, if we hadn't had like the point system, just separating those 2 whips would be impossible.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations on that. That was no easy task, I'm sure, and it takes the craftsman to really understand other craftsmen, I think. So thank you for your expertise there. It was
my pleasure.
It was a joy to watch the process as well as to see all the work there. Do you feel like this? How do I say this? If you buy Johnny's book, will you be able to win a competition? I mean, that's going a little overboard, but.
Well, I think you'll have a solid foundation to build on to get to that skill where you could win a competition. And I also do, explain how to braid patterns into your whip and what have you. And you just sort of, can you build a competition whip using my book? Sure you can, but you need practice as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, was it your book that you talk about after you make a certain number of whips, you get okay, and then after you get to 50 or so, you're a little bit better, and so on.
Yeah, sort of your how you evolve as a whip maker. Because I remember, like, making my first handful of whips. I was so proud of them. I thought they were absolutely amazing. But there's a lot of improvement going on when you're just starting out from knowing nothing. Yeah. So when you've made like 20 or 30 whips, you look back on those first handfuls of whips and you realize, well, they probably weren't that great.
Yeah.
And then as you continue to develop, once you've made 50 whips, you look back on the whip number 20, and it's and that's sort of just how it continues. But it'll sort of flatten out a bit. You'll come to a level when you are essentially making one good whip after another.
Mm-hmm.
So like the improvement won't be as dramatic, but as long as you're trying to try new things and try to improve things, improvement will always be there.
Sure.
And
you feel like you're still improving?
Sorry?
Do you feel like you're still improving?
Oh, sure. But I like to draw a comparison. Like if you're like me, if you're a bit of a fat guy, if I were to start running and I started like working out, I could see massive improvements the first year. But if you take like an Olympic sprinter, they can practice for a whole year just to shave like 1/10 of a second off their lap time.
True.
So in the beginning, you sort of improve rapidly, but then it sort of flattens out more and more. But as long as you keep, practicing, improvement will always be there, even if it's just
Sure.
minor.
Right.
So if you have a bunch of whip knots in your book here and in your new second book, which is awesome, can you name this knot on the end here?
Oh, that's a good question.
Oh, that looks like a pineapple knot to me.
Ah,
Yeah,
it does kind of resemble a pineapple.
that's exactly what
Yeah,
that
it
is.
sort of does. It has those characteristic zigzags.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like the spines here.
Yeah, like the spines
Yeah.
on a pineapple. Exactly right. Well, that's great. And Whipcon, there was a lot of fun stuff going on, not just whip making as well. And it was interesting to see that different people had, I mean, obviously they had their particular whip of choice that they were using, whether it was a stock whip or a bull whip or whatnot, for different events. And I think being able to see people use these whips to such a high level is really impressive as well, and probably helps with whip sales, I would think. If like Ian Cameron was the winner, which whips was he using for the single whip or the double whip or whatever.
Right.
Like he posted a video of Alyssa Myris's stock whips that he was using, doing some amazing stuff with, and yeah, I mean she makes a great whip.
Absolutely. Well, I think if you're a musician, especially if you're just starting out, I mean, when I was like 12 years old, I was really into AC/DC. I still am, but I was just getting into playing guitar, and I wanted the guitar that they used. I wanted the Gibson SG. So it could be the same thing, if you're just getting into whip cracking and you're really looking up to Ian or Adam or who have you, and like, what kind of whips are they using? And then you're probably gonna want to go get something similar or something from the same maker, perhaps.
Exactly right. And have you tried to, or I don't know if anybody was using any of your whips in this competition or not, but have people used your whips in competitions that you know of?
Oh, I don't know, actually. I think most people who did the competitions, I was busy judging the
True.
whips most of the time, so I didn't get to see much of the actual whip cracking competitions. But I think most of them used nylon whips.
I think most of them
So
did.
I don't think I was represented in the lineup of whips being used.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that the performers are using nylon so much now? Here in America, at least.
Well, I would probably say, like, if you're just out grinding, practicing your whip cracking, you're likely going to be using nylon whips because that's the sort of the modern day working whip, if you will.
Sure.
They can stand up to being cracked 4 hours every day. And when you get to the competition, you probably want to use the set of whips that you're accustomed to using. So
true.
that's probably one aspect. Whereas the leather whips are maybe used more for recreational whip cracking, if you will. We're just out in your backyard messing with the speed of sound.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, how do you think we can get people to use them more in the competition? I mean, that it is a little sad. We have these beautifully made whips that feel incredible to crack as a leather whip. We need to get them in the hand of these winning performers.
Well, I'm quite sure that most of like the top whip crackers do own a few leather whips at least.
Yeah.
But again, I think it just boils down to your approach to whip cracking, perhaps. Personally, I'm a whip maker primarily, but I do some whip cracking just for fun. And again, I primarily use my leather whips because that's what I enjoy the most. But I have a bunch of nylon whips that I use when I'm just out messing around. But so I think if you're coming into whip cracking, wanting to do it like sports or learning advanced techniques, I think you're probably going to lean towards the nylon whips more. And
It's a
probably
little,
just use those because you're familiar with them.
a lower barrier to entry as far as cost and availability, I would think, as well.
There's that as well, sure.
So your beginners are going to be using that. Thank you for joining us, Sebastian.
See ya.
He says bye. See ya.
See ya.
Thank you, Sebastian.
That was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. He was very excited to join, so I'm glad he was able to.
Awesome. Glad to have him.
Yeah, thank you for entertaining his questions. All right, so continuing on talking about both your book as well as the Whipcon, we have a lot of things we could talk about. There was a lot of events. There was a new obstacle course as well. I don't know if you had a chance to try that out with your whip or any
I
of the
wish
other.
I did, but I missed out on that one. But it looked like great fun.
It was great fun, and I have yet to set one up for myself here in the backyard, but I want to build one similar. The cut a target and then grab a handkerchief off the other side of the stand was, for those that don't know, and then do something, and then you have to hit an object out of a circle. And it was a lot of fun. And I practiced it, I think, 10 or 12 times beforehand, and I was 80% doing it 100% right every time.
Awesome.
So 80% of the time, I did it 100% right. But when it was time to do it, I just was all thumbs and didn't do very good. But
There's a lot of nerves that come
yeah.
creeping in, when you're up there and need to perform.
oh, of course, I'm sure that had a lot to do with it. But yeah,
I remember
Go ahead.
entering my first single whip freestyle competition.
Mhm.
And again, I'm not much of a whip cracker, but I thought I would enter it just for fun. And being up there, cracking whips with everyone looking, I never thought a minute could be so long. Like, isn't this going to end anytime soon? But yeah, there's a lot of nerves that comes in when you need to really perform.
Right, and depending on how aggressively, how hard you crack, how fast you crack, and you could get through your planned routine considerably faster than a minute if you're not careful. And
Exactly.
Or wear yourself out if you haven't practiced for that length of a performance.
Right.
There was, some people were obviously very strong and practiced quite often, and others were dying by the end of their time. You could see.
Right.
And some people cracked super fast, and other ones were very slow and relaxed, which is I love watching the videos when you crack, actually. You're so relaxed and just looks like you're just moving and letting the whip do its own crack, and then you just move a little bit and let the whip do its own crack. It's kind of a joy to watch.
Yeah, well, I always or mostly think of whip cracking like some sort of meditation. Again, since I'm a nerd when it comes to making whips, I like to sort of like feel just how the whip behaves. I'm not out after doing any fancy cracking or what have you.
Right.
The only real trick that I wanted to learn was the Queensland crossover, and I know how to do that. So I'm not really aspiring to do the Hazards for corners or what have you, because it's just not my style. So whenever I'm out whip cracking, I just feel like how the whip cracks, how the weight distribution is. It's a bit like a wine tasting, You take a small sip, swirl it around your mouth, just feel how it touches your palate, and that's what I enjoy about it.
Yeah, I love that idea. Kind of, Kit had a workshop at Whipcon called a flow workshop, he called it. And I think a lot of what you said ties into the way that he was showing how to do that. Really feel where the whip is in the air and feel your connection to it and feel it as an extension of yourself. Not that you have to be out there doing yoga with a whip, but having that connection between the two can be a very zen experience for sure, even if you're going fast and furious with them.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that I didn't mention in the intro, but you are, of course, in Sweden, and that is not here. That is,
it's not, unfortunately.
I am in Fort Worth, Texas, cow country. And Cowtown is Fort Worth, and it's someone having a bullwhip. It's not unusual. Is it unusual in Sweden? You have a guy that writes books and an expert here, a judge from Sweden.
Yeah, well, I'm my own island in a sense. No, no, we don't really have a history of using whips up here. But of course, we've had lots of cows and cattle and what have you, but we didn't use whips. We have the buggy whips, of course, for horses.
True,
but
as most
that's
of the world
about
did.
it. When we were herding cattle back in the days, we usually just had a stick and went along like clapping them, or just to sort of move everything along. So we don't have a culture of whips, if you will, historically. So, but there are a handful of whip enthusiasts around, none near me, but
no, as is the case, it seems like with everyone that likes whips, your friends aren't nearby, which is part of why we do this podcast, actually. And I appreciate you joining for that, to bring the community together.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Is the cattle culture? We're kind of going off a side trail here, but you have like 4 feet of snow just recently. How does that work? Do you go and dig the cows out of the snow? You don't have to herd them if they're buried.
Inside this time of year.
Okay.
So around April or so, we'll let them out into the pens and what have you, and they'll be out until sometime this autumn, and they'll head back inside again for the winter.
Okay.
So that's normally how that goes.
Yeah, around here, winter is a week, 2 weeks, and then it's warm again, and it gets cold again. But then it's short periods, so I'm not used to thinking of bringing the cows in for the winter, like an extended period of time. That's fascinating to see the difference. Also, I guess if you're just bringing them in, the once for an extended period of time, you're not doing a tremendous amount of herding them long distances. So here we were
herding them. That was more of a thing like way back. So we don't have wild cows running around everywhere. So.
Yeah. Versus here in Texas, people have the hundreds or thousands of acres, and the whips are still useful. And same in Australia too, with the large areas. Yeah. So how is it that in Sweden, not only did you become into whips and learning about whips and fascinated with them clearly, but wrote a book on it even. How did that come about? Where'd your interest start to lead to here?
Well, I think, when I was a kid or younger, I saw the indie movies, and I saw Batman Returns, and I saw Zorro and what have you. And I always thought, when a whip showed up on screen, it was really cool, but it didn't spark any true interest in me for whips at the time. I just thought it was a cool item, so I was happy to see one occasionally. But then I sort of, much later in life, happened upon your regular leather crafting. Mm-hmm. So I started making belts and just simple things. And I just got the weird idea, well, maybe I can try to research and see if I can learn to make a whip to put on the wall. And I got like the Ron Edwards book and the Encyclopedia of Rawhide and Leather Braiding. Mm-hmm. And just started researching, and that sort of dragged me into the small rabbit hole that is whip making. And it's a small hole, but it's incredibly deep. And I fell in there and just made it my home. I just love it there. So like all the belt making and wallet making just faded away in the background. All I wanted to do was whips, because I found it really interesting that such a, by the looks of it, simple item could take so much sophistication to build. Like building something so simple could be so hard.
Right. Actually, before you continue on, for those that haven't made a whip, that maybe they're considering like buying your book to make a whip, that haven't made one. Talk a little bit about some of that sophistication and I mean, should people be afraid of starting their own whip?
Absolutely not. I think of, a lot of people write me now and again saying like, hey, I really want to make a leather whip one day. Or I've got the tools, I just haven't gathered up the courage to cut into the leather. And the very simple answer is you just have to do it. You have to sort of look at those first couple of hides as a learning experience. It's probably not going to be great. Sorry, but it's the cost of tuition, really.
Yes.
You have to cut into those hides and just start practicing. And maybe it's a bit like, when you're learning how to drive, you can make circles in the big empty parking lot, but there comes a time where you need to sort of make that turn and head out into the actual road.
Right.
And that can be really scary if you only know your way around the parking lot.
Very true.
You're going to have to go out there if you want to learn how to drive. So,
right. And you're not going to go and become a professional truck driver before you're able to drive around the parking lot or drive down the street either.
Right.
Awesome.
So I think it's important just to, grab the bull by the horns and just do it. That's the boring but simple answer.
And I mean, definitely having good education is a great way to ease that transition, I think. Just like take driving lessons versus trying to figure it out yourself. Right. Both will work eventually, I suppose, but having a good instructor is important. And
also, while we're on the subject of driving, I think one of the reasons that I wanted to write my book from the very start was because, a lot of the classic books like the Ron Edwards one and what have you, they're absolutely amazing. But I thought that they were very basic in a sense. So again, if it were a book on how to drive a car, I think most of the old books were like, that's the steering wheel, that's the gas, have fun. Okay. But I can't really, I don't know how to drive a car from reading this. So I wanted to make one that, tells you, well, you have to use your indicators. Here's how to safely overtake someone. Like just go into more detail to really learn how to drive.
Right. What do you feel like is in your book that really was missing? Like, is really specifically, what sort of things? Give me one or two things that you wanted to add in there that wasn't.
Well, I think a lot of the old books were like, they didn't have enough details, I think.
Okay.
They'll essentially tell you like, braid a belly, but that's it. It didn't go into exactly how to cut out the belly, or to what width or length to cut the strands, or how tight to braid it, how it should feel when it's braided.
Nobody talks about that.
You have to know, if it's too tight or too loose, so I just wanted to, and also a lot of theory. Like maybe I remember like the balance in whips being very confusing to me when I was just starting out, because I figured it had to do something with weight distribution, but I couldn't find any information about it. So it took me a long time to figure out what balance in whips was all about. So I sort of put that in the book as well, just to get that down there for the next person.
Right.
Because, if I've been down this road for a bit, if there's a low-hanging branch, I like to yell out to the guy behind me to watch out for that branch.
Exactly.
So that's sort of what the book is about, like just putting a bunch of information together that might be useful or interesting to the beginner.
Yeah, I'd like to dig into that a little bit so people can kind of get a feel for what you're talking about. So in balance, let's talk about that. So there is the idea of course, lead weighting, wrapping a lead sheeting around the heel knot. There is I've seen people like balance a whip on their finger to balance the handle to the thong. Other people, I see them cracking it and talking about the balance. What does balance mean to you, and how are you teaching people about what is balance?
Well, again, as with so many other things, balance can mean different things to different people. But I might get a bit of hate for this, but I just think it's silly, trying to balance the whip on your finger,
Yeah,
saying it's
right.
perfectly balanced. But to me, it all boils down to feel. Maybe someone could relate to a whip being very nose heavy, for example. So that's one type of balance, if you will. And having the weight further back into the handle, that's another type of balance.
Hmm.
And there's no like set point, like if you were to hang the whip up, it should balance right at the transition. There's no such thing in my book. But it's more of just making the whip comfortable. When you pick up a whip and crack it, you want it to be comfortable to
Right.
use and crack.
Exactly.
And I think the balance plays a big part of that.
I do too. And some of the times I've felt a whip that I thought was unbalanced is where I feel like I'm having to force it through the air. It's like the thong, the
Right.
handle is too short or too light to balance when I'm trying to move the thong around. When I want to reverse it and pull it against the way that momentum is moving, it's very difficult to do that.
Sure.
Other times I picked up whips that coiled up. They feel super heavy, like indie style whips usually with on a nail spike.
Mhm.
But yet when I'm moving them, they move around very smoothly, and I to me that is a balanced whip.
I would agree with that 100%. There's also, some talk. Occasionally, someone will want to order a whip and they ask, like, how much does it weigh? And I'm always like, I don't know. I don't weigh them.
It
The only
weighs
time
the
I
right
weigh
amount.
a whip is when I'm about to ship it,
Right.
just to see what the parcel is. But because, depending on the balance, a, a heavy whip can feel light when used if it's
Yeah,
balanced
exactly.
nicely.
Exactly.
And also in a whip that the balance is way off, it can be light, in your
Hmm.
hand, but when you start to crack it, it might feel really heavy.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt some stock whips like
And
that out at Whipcon. I won't name any names. Some people like that feeling than other ones.
sure,
To like for the four quarters, they usually want the Hassett's four corners. They want to have that weight more out in the thong, but for just moving it around easily cracking, to me it felt like more work than I was expecting to have to put into it. So it's just a
right.
different feeling. It wasn't bad. They loved it.
Yeah. But that's also why most whip enthusiasts have a bunch of whips. It's like if you're going golfing, you're not going to bring one club because they all have
That's true.
different intents and purposes. Sometimes for this particular trick, you might need a whip that's really thong heavy
Yeah.
because it just makes, getting that one crack behind you a wee bit easier. And other times when you're like me, you're just going to be out cracking just for fun or to relax. You want something that's just nice and comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. And so it just you need to pick the right club for the course you're on, or for the hole
Right.
you're at, where you're at on the hole.
Yeah.
I remember Adam talking on one of his, I don't know, video or something, but how different Australian crackers will have a whip for one specific trick that they're wanting
Mm-hmm.
to do. So, and that's all that one's reserved for, and they will buy a bunch of different ones from different makers until they find the one that feels just right to them for that particular trick.
Sure. I think oftentimes it could be that they're so accustomed to using one particular set of whips. And obviously, they're all going to be different, at least slightly different.
Yep.
And once that particular set of whips break or gets too old or what have you, just trying to find, because you develop the muscle memory for different cracks and tricks,
Exactly.
and they just need to find something that's as close as possible to that old set because that's how you know how to do that trick. So you want something that's really similar to that. And you might have to go through tens of whips just to find something that's even close.
Right.
But
Right. And you're talking about very nuanced differences there.
yes.
Have you had to try to match something like that for anyone? Have you had any of those people come at you wanting details like that?
I don't think so, but I'm quite hesitant to trying to match things. I feel like that puts a cap to my own workmanship in a sense. I mean, it would be very difficult to make an exact copy, but when you're braiding leather, every hide is going to be different. You know, how much conditioner you or planning soap that you put into a whip will
Right.
affect the weight ever so slightly. So there's just too many perimeters to try to match. And
Right.
just, you know, if you split your belly strands to 0.7 mils instead of 0.8, that's going to make a difference.
That's
And
true.
the plaiting tension, and so it's just so much. So I just don't want to try to match something that's specific.
So you make the best whip you can. I mean, they probably good advice for everybody. Make the best whip you can with the material you have and how you know how to do it, and
Right.
see what it matches to what people want. I suppose.
Yeah. But, you know, if someone were to come to me and say, hey, Johnny, I have this stock whip. It was made by Chris Barr 10 years ago, and I want one just like it to use this as a matched set, I would probably have to turn it down. I mean, I could probably get reasonably close if I wanted to, but it's still not going to be as close as it needed to be. So, yeah, I don't think I would probably just suggest get a new set of properly matched sets.
Right.
Would be a lot easier.
Yeah, I was listening to another whip maker. I think it was Glenn Denholm. He had a performer that was using a pair of whips that he had made many, many years ago and had been handed down to them. And so they were very broken in, very old, and they were getting pretty good in the whip cracking circuit, and a mouse or something chewed through the strands and just destroyed it like halfway down the thong. And they were wanting a replacement. And it was a similar conversation to what you're saying right here. Like, I recommend just getting a new set and just kind of learning it over again with a new set as close as I can. But, you know, that was 20 years ago. And
Right.
I make whips
I
very
actually
differently.
have a riding crop right here that lost the heel knot to a mouse.
Oh, my
So I need
goodness.
to
Look.
retie that. But, you know, it was lucky, you know, that it was just a heel knot. I mean, the mouse could have chewed it right here in the
Yeah,
center of
right
the
in the
crop.
middle.
But keep your whips away from mice and dogs and also foxes. I remember someone getting their whip chewed by a fox.
Wow. All kinds there.
Yeah.
Is there other than just keeping him up off the floor, is there any way to treat it? Or I've heard of people mixing things into the plaiting soap to keep things away from it.
I mean, that's one way, but I would just suggest that I keep all my whips in a big, like IKEA plastic box with a lid. So that keeps it safe from potential pets. And I have a couple of crazy cats, and they chewed the fall off a couple of whips.
Oh, no.
So it also protects it from them. But, you know, I think it was probably more of a thing back in the days when you hung your whip up in the barn before you went in for the night.
True.
So in those instances, it might be good to have something that would repel mice. But I mean, just don't place it on the kitchen counter where your dog can grab it. You know,
Right.
Just be mindful and store it somewhere where they can't get to it.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. And I forget which book it was, but they was talking about mixing kerosene into the plaiting soap. And that was a little disturbing. I don't think that's probably good for the leather. But
No, I don't know, but again, it probably did a job back then.
clearly.
But I think it would be much easier just to put it somewhere
put it
where
away,
mice can't get to it.
Do you have a particular recipe you talk about either in your book or that you use yourself? Blake Gorey mentioned he has his own special blend that he uses.
Yeah, the snake oil.
Yeah, the snake oil.
Well, I like to make life as easy for me as I possibly can. So I do 90% of my braiding with Phoebing's Aussie conditioner. So
Good
I
stuff.
use
Good stuff.
that for planning soap. It works absolutely great, and I can just buy it in the can and it's ready to go. So there's no hustle of having to cook your planning soap.
All
And I've
right.
done that in the past, and it's doable, but I just don't want to.
No, I understand. Actually, you can kind of see it here on my door. This one was years ago. That was natural. So it has
Uh,
been conditioned over the years to get much much darker. So,
right. Well, it's also, important when you're making a whip, like different braiding soaps and different conditioners will affect the leather in different ways.
mhm.
And I sort of stumbled on the Phoebing's conditioner more or less by chance, but I really loved what it did to the leather. Like the whiskey collar and the saddle tan collar, it sort of darkened it somewhat, but it at the same time like made the collar really pop in a
Okay,
sense.
sure.
But on a natural hide, it left it almost did nothing to it. And I thought that was really interesting. Like it would darken the whiskey color or the saddle tan color, but it wouldn't do much to the natural. And so
Interesting.
I just started using it for uh, essentially all my braiding. But if I don't want to do anything to the collar of the whip, I'll use Big Four and
Big four. Okay.
braid the overlay with that. I
Oh,
have
I haven't used that one.
this one.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
So it's a really weird conditioner. It's almost like silicone in a way. So it's really slippery. But the only downside to it is the leather just soaks it up. So you just slather it on, and 2 minutes later, it's all gone. It just
Oh,
heads straight into the leather.
wow.
But and also, it doesn't seem to add the same amount of weight to the whip as plaiting soap or Phoebing's does.
I wonder if it's a water
So
base also to where it's evaporating too. Like,
I don't know.
that would be interesting. Some of the other, it might have been Blake actually, but what about the thought of potentially oversaturating either a belly or a bolster with making it too heavy and too saturated so it comes out later, squishes through the overlay at one point. Is it possible, in your opinion, to oversaturate any of that, or you're using the
Well,
wrong
of
stuff?
course it's possible, but I think it would be very hard to go overboard
Hmm.
with the conditioning. Uh, Me personally, I think, the whip needs to have a lot of conditioner or planning soap or what have you in the core and in the bellies, because as you condition the whip later on, it'll essentially be just the overlay.
True.
Of course, it's going to penetrate somewhat into the whip, but it won't get into the core anytime soon. So I just make sure to slather everything in there with bunches of conditioner to make sure that that keeps the insides in good condition for years to come.
Right. Right. That makes a lot of sense,
But
actually. Go ahead.
I think some whips do have the bloom coming out from the braiding, and I mean it's not a big deal really. You can clean it off without too much hustle, but it's just one of those things that sometimes it happens because of
Yeah.
whatever conditioner or fats the particular maker used, but it's not a big deal.
Okay. That's good to hear. Do you, or we were talking actually out at Whipcon about bolster material. Speaking of that, do you have any of that? You recently you switched to Chrome Split. Is that correct?
No, I've been using that
Or
for
you've been using it? Okay.
maybe,
Someone
yeah,
else
maybe
changed.
5 or 6 years at least.
How do you feel that works versus just a really thin cowhide that has, both sides on it? Do you feel that is different? And how
Well,
so?
I think the Chrome Split, I use Chrome Split for the core and the bolster in my Aussie bull whips. And I think it makes for a real fluent whip. Uh, it to me, like using your regular cowhide, even if it's thin, is going to make the whip a lot stiffer. And since the Aussie bull whips are quite light, having it be really stiff would mean it has a more trouble, at least before it breaks in properly, to form a loop. And but I'll use cowhide for my classic models, and for shot bags and what have you. So the chrome split is sort of reserved for the Aussie model, but it makes for a fantastic whip in my opinion. But the bellies are still kangaroo.
Okay, so it would be chrome split cowhide is what that would be specifically, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, fascinating.
So it's a very, very similar to suede.
Right.
A bit thicker.
Yeah, I've got, which is, I think basically it means they've split a thick piece, and this is like the backside, so both sides look similar, correct?
I believe it is, yes.
Yeah.
And it's a very strong, but very soft and pliable at the same time.
Is it, I'm not as, I want to interview some people from the leather making community soon, which I've been talking to you about on the side. Thank you for that connection. Mm-hmm. Do you think the getting a kangaroo chrome split would be different, or would it? You think? Have you tried that? Something?
I don't think that would be possible, actually, given how thin the kangaroo skins are.
That's true. Like just
splitting
having
that down,
the skin. Like if you took a half mil off, well, what was left, it would still be super thin. I don't know how thin it starts out as.
But I've used. Let's see here. Pig skin. Mm-hmm. That's split like a chrome split or a suede or what have you, and it's really thin, like 0.5 mils.
Wow. Okay.
And that's been doing quite okay. I've not used it regularly, just for experiments on the side. Right. But it doesn't add the weight or the diameter that I'm after.
Right. Yeah, I've got several different things that I've got for other experiments too. This is chrome tan, but it's not. It's two different sides to it, so it would not work, and it feels like a car seat too. So I don't think it's going to be in any whips. But it's interesting to see. Are you experimenting with other materials as time goes on? Do you have access to try different things or?
Well, I'm always open to it, obviously. I don't like to shut any doors prematurely. But I think I'm not actively looking for new materials, because I feel, in a sense, that I've sort of landed in what I like to use. For the Aussie models, it's the chrome split and the kangaroo bellies. For the classic model, it is Vegtang cow for the bolsters and the core and the kangaroo bellies. And for the stock whips, I do that all kangaroo. So it's a kangaroo core, kangaroo belly, kangaroo bolster, and kangaroo overlay.
Wow.
And it's just how I like to make them. But if I stumble across a material that seems interesting or that might do the job better than anything else, I'll be open to trying it.
All right. Is there anything that you have that you've changed in the last few years that you feel like has solved the problem that
has solved a problem? On my YouTube channel, I have a video. I think it's called "How Your Whip Is Made."
Right.
And I got Nick Schrader doing a voiceover for it. And in that particular video, I'm doing more or less a classic bull whip build with the cowhide core, kangaroo bellies, and cowhide bolsters. And I used to make my Aussie models using that same principle. But then I sort of discovered the chrome split and changed up the design of the Aussie model. And it just made for a very nice whip. So I sort of stuck to that when it came to the Aussie model. And I also tried, incorporating the chrome split into the classic model, but it just didn't feel quite right. So
I like that you're experimenting or had you have experimented to really determine what is the best versus
Sure, sure. But also, small changes that you make, trying to seek improvement, doesn't always improve your work. Sometimes it just makes it a bit different. It doesn't have to be better or worse, it's just different. And
Right.
but I think, like, for me at least, and how I build my whips, the chrome split made my Aussie models a lot nicer. So again, they were pretty good before that, but
They're that much
so I
better now.
decided to go that route. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Do you, so we've covered a lot of different material here, and I do want to be respectful of your time. We're at over an
You keep
hour.
saying that. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. Just
I'm
keep me
very
on here.
disrespectful of your time. We're going to go as long as I want, regardless of what you say. No. How can people get a hold of your new book? Is pre-orders up? I mean, I'm not sure when the show will exactly be released, but it'll be very soon. Yeah, what's the plan
Yes,
there to get these into people's hands?
the plan is, I have by the time you're watching this, most likely the pre-order will have opened.
Okay.
So you should head over to my website. It's witchcraftwhips.se/book. And if you find me on Facebook or Instagram, you'll also find a link in some post that'll
Okay.
take you directly to it.
And I'll put links to
And
all of that in the descriptions at various places for this as well,
awesome.
so people can
But
just click on it.
yeah, so I'm doing a special pre-order package for those who decide to pre-order.
Oh, nice.
Excuse me. So everyone who pre-orders will get the book, obviously, but they'll also get a few stickers
Ooh.
that I'm having made. So I'm just waiting for those to show up, and I'm gonna leave a window of about 3 or 4 weeks for the pre-orders.
Okay.
So everyone who wants to pre-order and get the stickers for free will have a chance to do so, and then we should have the books in the mail sometime mid-March.
Mid-March. All right. Then people will start making all kinds of wonderful whips with
Yes,
your guidance
hopefully.
there. All right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Johnny. This has been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you, Sebastian, who snuck out earlier, but thank you for co-hosting with me. And I hope everyone go out and buy Johnny's book. I'm going to be getting one, and I'm looking forward to trying all these models out with Johnny's build recommendations and trying them out myself. This is very exciting. And I'm looking forward to seeing what everyone makes. And hopefully next year at Whipcon, get to see you again. Maybe everyone else that see all these different ones that people have made this year using your guidelines as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic, to see people post things that they've done using my book. And I'm actually really surprised just how well beginners are doing.
Me too.
Can't remember the guy's name, but he showed me, oh, this is my second whip. And he sent a picture to me, and he used my book, and it looks absolutely amazing. So
Awesome.
people are doing a lot of great work out there, so keep it up. And also a big thank you to you, Christian, as well, for making the podcast. Absolutely amazing stuff.
Thank you very much. It is a labor of love. And
it is.
If you have a dollar or two left over after ordering Johnny's book, I do have a donation page as well. But go buy the book. This will keep going regardless. I'm over at whipchatpodcast.com/donate. If anyone wants to help out, that'd be a big help. But yeah, go get Johnny's book. We're gonna make whips and crack whips, and I hope to see everyone out there, and we can meet up and talk online, join the various Facebook groups. But I hope everyone just keeps on cracking. Thank you again, Johnny, for joining the show, and I look forward to seeing you in person next time you're over this way.
I'm going to do my absolute best to make it out there again.
All right. Thank you all, and keep on cracking.